Update. My parents hated me because I could not have kids and failed to give them a grandchild. They even called me a waste and told my husband that he deserved better, so he left me. Now after 3 years I bumped into them with a baby and now they are suddenly begging me for another chance. All of them just respected that, and for the past 3 years, I've been in therapy and have been living pretty well. The only thing that had been bothering me was the absence of a baby because, even though I did not have a husband or parents anymore, I still wanted a child. I felt like I was ready to be a mother, and last year, I started medical treatments and got pregnant with the help of an anonymous donor. 4 months ago, I gave birth to my baby girl. Life has been pretty great since she was born, and I'm really happy. About 4 days ago, I had been strolling down the street with her, which is when I bumped into my parents and Scott. I was really shocked to see them on my street at first, and I thought that they were here to see me. But I realized that they were walking out of a house a couple of blocks away. When they spotted me, I literally froze, and I should have gone back home, but I just didn't have it in me to move. So they walked over to me, greeted me, and then immediately asked about the baby because, to their knowledge, I couldn't have kids. I responded to them with the truth, and by then, I had processed what was happening and was starting to walk back home. But Scott stopped me and said that he was really glad that he had bumped into me because he had been thinking about me a lot recently. Apparently, they had come here to visit his aunt who had recently moved into this neighborhood, and he thought that bumping into me was a sign from the universe that he should make things right with me again and give our relationship a second chance. My parents were also standing right there, and they insisted that I invite them home and we have a chat about everything that's been going on in my life since they have clearly missed out on a lot. I was honestly appalled that they were even saying any of this and actually thought that I was going to invite them in after all that had happened in the past. It had taken me 3 whole years to move on from it, and I'm still in therapy trying to work on my feelings. So I kind of had a bit of an outburst and told them that I would rather invite a bunch of bears into my house than them because they would still be better. I told them to stop pretending like they actually cared about me or what was going on with me because the only reason they wanted to speak to me was because I now had a baby. My parents wanted to speak to me because they were finally going to get a grandkid, and Scott wanted to talk to me because, obviously, he hadn't been able to find anyone else. He thought that since I had been able to get pregnant once, getting pregnant again would not be a problem, and he could just waltz back into my life again. It was sickening that all they saw me as was a source of babies and not a real person with real feelings. They had all abandoned me when I needed them the most to support me emotionally, even though I had expected it from my parents because they had already made it very clear to me right from my childhood that they would much rather prefer a boy. In their opinion, the only value that a woman had was defined by whether she was capable of being a mother or not. But the real shocker had been Scott, who had spent so many years with me and even comforted me. In spite of all that, he had gone along with whatever my parents had said for some twisted reason and left me when I was at my lowest. I hadn't forgotten any of the things that they had said to me, and I just repeated it back to them. Since I was worthless as a woman and Scott deserved better, maybe they should leave me alone now. Honestly, I've always been a very quiet, shy person, but when they confronted me in the street that day, I had been yelling at them at the top of my lungs. It was 3 years' worth of anger coming out all at once, so it had been pretty bad. Once I was done yelling at them, I made a run for it back to my house and shut the door as quickly as I could. I had been feeling extremely sick after that, so I decided not to go to work for a couple of days and have been staying at home with my baby since then. My interaction with my parents and Scott had been playing in my head on a loop since then, and I honestly had no idea what I was going to do about it until last evening when I received a call from an unknown number. I don't know why I usually don't answer calls from numbers that are not known to me, but yesterday, I decided to pick up the phone. It was Scott on the other end, and behind him, I could hear my parents whispering in the background. I'm pretty sure they were not even trying to be quiet, they actually wanted me to know that they were there. Anyway, I tried not to let myself be too affected by that. I just told him that I wanted him not to call me again because otherwise, I would be forced to take precautionary steps against him, and I did not want to do that. I told him the same thing went for my parents as well. I did not want anything to do with them, and the only reason I had even picked up the call was because I wanted them to know that I was done. I had been done 3 years back as well, and I'm still going to be sticking to it. But Scott told me to hear him out, and in spite of myself, I couldn't hang up. So I let him speak, and he told me that he knew that he had messed up, and so had my parents, but it was just coming from a place of disappointment. He told me that both my parents and even he himself had really been looking forward to starting a family and having a baby in the family and whatnot. Finding out that I couldn't have kids and wasn't even willing to go through medical treatments until we had enough money was difficult to come to terms with for them, and they hadn't dealt with it in the best way possible. But now they really wanted me to give them a second chance to prove that they were worthy of being a part of my family. After a few seconds, I told him that I did not buy any of the nonsense that they were trying to sell me. They wouldn't have cared about me if they hadn't seen me with the baby that day, and that was the bottom line, that was the truth of the matter, and I was sick of them trying to pretend that it wasn't. Then I was about to hang up, but my parents got up from the back and said that this was the exact kind of behavior that they had cut me off for. Apparently, they believed that I had been very selfish and was only thinking about myself when I found out that I could not have kids. Instead of giving everybody their space, I kept forcing my presence onto them and kept trying to get them to comfort me and pay attention to me all the time, even though they were struggling with the news themselves as well. That's why everyone had ended up pushing me away, which is how I ended up in the position of having no one there for me. I did not entertain the conversation after that, I just hung up. I know, I really do know, that they were just trying to gaslight me, but I can't help but doubt myself now. Just for my own peace of mind, I need to ask, Ida, because I asked for reassurance after I found out that I was infertile? Edit. So, first of all, a lot of people wanted to know why my parents had not tried for another baby after I was born if they wanted a boy so badly. Well, my mother had to deal with a lot of complications during her first pregnancy as well, and the doctors had suggested waiting for a couple of years before they tried for another one. But even when she had me, she was in her mid-30s. Waiting for a few more years would mean that she had to wait until her late 30s, which would mean that the pregnancy would be even more risky. Just like I had to struggle a lot to conceive and eventually found out that I couldn't have kids, my mother also had to struggle a lot to conceive me. The only catch was that when she was struggling, it was her mother-in-law who was very mean to her, but this time with me, it was my own mother who couldn't spare a thought about me. Anyway, that was the reason why they could not have another child and were stuck with just me, a daughter. I don't really know exactly what kind of relationship Scott had with his parents, but from whatever I had observed, they seemed to get along pretty well. As of now, I don't know if they have been able to make up after the last fallout that they had since I haven't kept in touch with his parents, and I obviously haven't spoken to Scott about it. But Scott is an only child, he definitely did not have any competition, and whenever I visited his parents, I could see that they really loved him and he had been treated well right from his childhood. So I really have no idea why he latched onto my parents like he did. At least with my parents, I knew that they wanted a son, which is why they started treating Scott like that. But with him, I have no idea what went wrong. In the past, I hadn't really thought about it or questioned it, but now that you guys bring it up, I feel like I have to speak to my ex-in-laws and get to the bottom of it.